Hey guys, welcome back to Pop Culture at Pat. So today we're going to be talking about Yellowjackets Episode 9. This is going to contain spoilers, so if you guys haven't seen the episode, just a heads up. So if you want to watch the episode and come back afterwards, that's totally fine. Otherwise, if you don't care about spoilers, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this thing. But real quick, before we dive into the episode, the recap and the review, if you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you guys get notifications for all my new videos. I'm going to be covering the finale next week as well. I also have an interview with one of the cast members coming up, so definitely make sure that you hit that subscribe button as well as the notification button. That way you get notifications for it. Give the video a thumbs up, and without further ado, let's go ahead and talk this episode. So the episode opens up and we find Shauna. She's confronting Adam, obviously right where the last episode ended off. She's confronting him because, she thinks that he's the one that, blackmailed them and that he's the one that stole her journals. So, she shows up there. She's like, all right, just admit, who you are. I know what's going on. I can't believe I let you into my life. He's like, no, like that's not the case. That's not what I was trying to do. And he doesn't really understand, what's going on. But Shauna does find, she opens up like one of his drawers and finds a couple like magazines and stuff on like the story about like the Yellowjackets. And so she shows that to him and he's like, okay, yes, I did Google you just because I was trying to figure out, like what happened to you and get a little bit more understanding. But she doesn't believe him and she ends up killing him. Wasn't expecting that to happen to kick off the episode. So definitely a pretty intense way to begin things. And now we don't really know, who he is. Like obviously, he goes by Adam, but Shauna's daughter, when she was like, pulling up information on him, and even the last episode, Shauna wasn't really able to find anything, about the school he had went to, even though he said that, he had made that up. I still think his identity is going to be a big thing that isn't done by the end of obviously this episode, and who knows, even maybe with the finale, it might be something that they explore going into season 2. I know one or two of you guys, I believe in the comments of the last video, and I had seen this afterwards as well, were thinking that that was actually like Javi, maybe, that he had survived the woods, but I don't think that's the case. So right to start things off, like obviously Adam, his whole identity is still a big question mark. And now he's dead, so who knows if we're going to really find out like who he was. But I still think that's going to be something that plays into late, the next episode and then like potentially next season as well. We go back, you cut back to the past and you see, the girls, they're obviously, running out of food at this point. So they're digging up like bugs and stuff and eating those. And I was like, oh, that's fucking disgusting. So they're eating those. And it's important because this, plays on to later in the episode. But Jackie, she doesn't eat anything. And, that's, you'll see obviously why later on in like the episode. But, they start talking. One of the other girls, she's like, oh, like I got some crushed up berries. I think it's actually kind of turned into alcohol. And so Jackie suggests that they have, a party. And they kind of all start talking and mention that like homecoming was coming up and it's going to be a full moon. And so they decide to, have like a party. And that's where the title of this episode comes from, because Lottie actually says, oh, it'll be Doomcoming. So that's kind of where you get the title of the episode, which is, was pretty funny. We then come back to present day and we see, Shauna, she's in her bedroom and she's putting, which it looked like, it's kind of like it was hard to tell watching the initial episode. So don't kill me guys if I got this wrong. But watching it like initially, it looked like she was putting Adam's ID, wallet, or whatever like in her safe. But while she's doing that, she sees like the glitter on the ground, and as to kind of, I think, like hide, play it off as to what she was doing, since Jeff is right there, she decides to, ask him also, because she thinks that, he's been cheating on her like this whole time as well. So she asks him about the glitter that's on the ground, and at first Jeff's kind of like, oh, I don't know what's happening. And then, he admits that he's like, oh, like I didn't mean for you to get caught up in this. And we find out that Jeff was actually the one behind the blackmail. So I thought that, I had a feeling that was going to be the case, guys. As I had mentioned, like in the last episode, like I didn't think that it was as simple as him having an affair, with that woman. And we find out that, so basically he he wasn't lying as far as like his store, like going there trying to like, you know, work on more things. Basically his store was in trouble and he was trying to come up with money. He ended up going to like these loan sharks to get money and he got in trouble with them, so he was trying to get out of that situation, and that's why he ended up, because he thought Ty and Nat had money, he thought that he could get out of the situation, so it kind of created a whole mess. But we find out that he didn't actually cheat on Shauna, and you know, she accidentally admits that, you know, she did. And so you find out that Jeff actually this whole time, granted he went about things, you know, kind of like wrong, but he was, you know, pretty much like innocent like in this situation. And yeah, I felt so bad for Jeff. I was like, God damn it, I knew it. I knew that it wasn't just as simple as him like cheating on her. So I thought that was, you know, makes a lot of sense, you know, now looking back on that. We cut back to the past, and you see the group working on their outfits for, you know, the Doomcoming coming up, and it kind of, you know, it hints to what we saw in episode 1, where, you know, we saw like the Antler Queen, and we see all the other characters, all their different outfits as well. So it kind of gives us a hint as to what we're gonna see when that, you know, whole situation kind of plays out. You know, whether it's next week in the finale or season 2. But that was, you know, kind of cool to see that, and you see Lottie with what looks like the Antler Queen, you know, like outfit, and then that, you know, kind of plays into later in the episode. And then Misty, you know, she goes over and she once again is, you know, trying to manipulate, you know, the coach, and she's like, oh, like, will you go to, you know, the homecoming or the Doomcoming dance with me? And, you know, at first he's like, you know, I don't think that, you know, is like a good idea, but, you know, she kind of guilts him into the situation, so he's like, okay, fine, I will. And obviously he's just, you know, worried about probably, you know, Misty trying to, you know, kill him, so he definitely wants to try and be on her good side as much as he possibly can. You then see Jackie and Shauna, they're walking throughout the woods, you know, gathering up like different things, and you see Jackie, she's still trying to get Shauna to admit, you know, what she did, because, you know, again, she knows what happened, but Shauna has not, you know, admitted that part, you know, so far. And so she's trying to kind of guilt her into admitting, you know, like what happened, but she doesn't. And then Jackie, you know, she's talking about, she's like, you know, we're probably going to die out here. And I've decided that, you know, I don't want to be a virgin and die out here in the woods. And so she tells Shauna that she's actually going to try and hook up with Travis. And, you know, Shauna's like, you know, she's like, what the hell? You can't do that because of Nat. And Jackie's, you know, she's like, you know what? I don't, you know, don't really care. You know, they're not together anymore. And so it's one of those things that, again, kind of plays into, and they've been building on it throughout, you know, this first season. But Jackie definitely, it's like, I do like her character, but as far as like that aspect goes, not so much. It's like, damn girl, you are making a lot of enemies, and this is not going to help that situation at all. And as we see later on in the episode, that is definitely the case. Then we go back to Shauna and Jeff. You know, they're talking about just trying to figure out what they're going to do with like this whole situation, because, you know, Shauna, she admits that she ended up killing Adam, so they kind of have that, you know, whole like situation. And it's crazy, you know, there's this episode, it's like, damn, I felt so bad for Jeff, because Jeff, you know, he's like, you know what, I'm not going to let you take the fall for this. I'm going to go to the police and I'm going to say that I was the one, you know, I caught, you know, my wife and her lover, and I ended up killing him. And so that way he would take the fall. But Shauna's like, no, we can't do that, because they start, you know, digging into things. It's going to affect, you know, both of us. It's going to affect like our daughter. So we can't do that. So they're trying to come up with another situation. And so Jeff, he actually mentions that, you know, we find out that Randy also knows about the blackmail, you know, as well. And so he tells Shauna, he's like, hey, why don't you tell Ty and Nat that Adam was the guy that was blackmailing you guys? And so they decide to come up with that plan to make it look like that was the case, so they can kind of, you know, get rid of that body, and that will be it. So that way it's only Shauna, Jeff, and Randy that knew at least about the blackmail part of things. We then, you know, cut back to the past again, and we see Misty, you know, she goes into the woods, and she goes into her little secret stash and gets out, you know, some like shrooms, and she has like a whole binder, you know, filled with stuff, which is pretty wild. But she pulls out, you know, some like shrooms. And originally, you know, when I first like first watched the episode, didn't really pick up on it. But the second time, originally, that I think, you know, obviously the shrooms I think were just initially supposed to be just for Coach. But when she ends up bringing them into like the cabin, and she has to go upstairs to help Shauna to zip up like her outfit, they get left on the table, and they end up getting mixed in with the food with like everybody else's as well. So initially, I'm pretty sure they were just supposed to be for the Coach, but everybody else ends up having some of that, food later on, like, as well. And we see Shauna, she's upstairs, she's trying to get into her outfit, when Misty has to come up there and help her. And we see that Shauna's, struggling to zip up her outfit because, she's starting to just show more. So my question is, I feel like it could be, I guess, like, kind of like obvious. My question is, for that, is Shauna going to deliver the baby? And is that, her daughter, the daughter that she has, like, in the show, like, right now? I'm kind of thinking, like, I don't know why, for some reason, I'm thinking that maybe she still does lose the baby, and then she has her daughter, afterwards when she gets out of the woods, and maybe this was a whole, different, child. But I want to hear what you guys, your guys' thoughts on that situation is. Definitely let me know down below in the comments. Does she have her daughter out here, and so technically her daughter was born, like, out in the woods? Or is this like a completely different child? Let me know what your guys' thoughts are. We then see, Misty. She's with the reporter, investigator person, Jessica Roberts, or, whatever her name was. We see them, like, talking. And initially, I thought with, like, last episode that maybe they were going to work together. But I don't think that's the case after watching this, because you can see that, Jessica, she's... It's kind of like a situation, I think, similar to, Misty when she was with, like, the coach, where coach is just trying to kind of play along because he didn't want Misty to kill her. I think that's sort of the same situation here, where Jessica, she's, like, tied up. She's just kind of... She's still trying to, I think, get Misty to spill, like, her secrets, so then she can do whatever, once she gets out. And she's trying to kind of to make Misty feel like she's like, hey, these girls, they haven't talked to you. You should kind of do, like, your own thing. Like, they don't even care about you. So she's trying to get on Misty's good side. I think, one, to obviously survive, but I kind of wonder, like, what else she might possibly be trying to do, with that information. Like, I mean, obviously, she could, bring that out to, like, the news and just, like, tell everybody. I'm kind of wondering, like, is Misty actually going to talk? And does this, does Jessica kind of know everything that's going on? She hints at it because she's like, oh, did you guys, ate each other out there, right? And she kind of, like, asks her about it. So I don't know if she 100% knows that's what they kind of, like, hint at in this episode. So it'll be interesting to see, like, how that whole situation kind of, like, plays out. But last time I doubted Misty, she ended up proving me wrong. So I still think that even though it looks like she's going to talk, I don't think it's going to be, like, that easy. I feel like she's definitely got something else, like, up her sleeve as far as, like, that whole situation goes. We then get to the point in the episode where Doomcoming is officially happening, and we see that Ty and Van, they actually, like, officially come out to the group, which I thought was a really cool, moment in the episode, and we end up finding out that goes a long way for, Coach, like, later on in the episode as well. So that was a really, cool moment. And then, once again, so, Doomsday, it's going on, or Doomcoming, Doomsday. Doomcoming is going on, and we see, everyone kind of hanging out, dancing and stuff like that. They're starting to eat, and Shauna's like, hey, Jackie, you really need to eat. And once again, we see her throw the food, like, away, so she doesn't end up eating, and it plays, an important part, because at this point, you know that the shrooms are in all the food, and so everyone starts eating it, and, they start, tripping, like, later on in the episode. So Jackie was, like, one of the only people that wasn't, affected by that. And she ends up calling Travis over, and Nat's, like, right there. So she obviously sees, what's going on. So she goes away with Coach because she actually has some, like, alcohol. So they go to, just, like, kind of, like, talk and do their own little thing for a little bit. And then you see Shauna sees Jackie and Travis, and they're going away and doing, their own little thing, like, as well. In this episode, we also get confirmation that Jeff actually read, Shauna's, like, journals. And it sounds like that he's known everything that what happened, out there, like, in the woods, everything that happened, he's known this for a while. So that was, another revelation, like, in the episode, like, as well. And then, we see, Shauna, and this kind of takes place, like, towards, like, the end of the episode, like, as well. We see Shauna, she calls Ty and Nat and tells them, to meet up with her because she found the person that was blackmailing them. And then, they're at Adam's place. She explains, like, the whole situation. She has, like, the bag and everything, so it makes it look like Adam was, in fact, the guy that was blackmailing them. And, they realize, they're like, oh, shit, like, we have to get rid of this body and, figure out what they're going to do with, like, all the evidence. And so that kind of, they have to figure out what they're going to do with that whole thing. And so at the end of the episode, kind of, jumping, to that point, Nat ends up going to visit Misty. She apologizes for, being kind of like a shithead to her, even though she just wants to, she needs her help as far as, being able to like hide this body or doing something with the body. So at this point, we see that everyone, is pretty much like tripping off like the shrooms. So we see like the main group of girls where like, the Doomcoming was, where the event, and they're all kind of like, like walking around. They feel, weird, obviously. But Lottie, she's like, something is coming and we won't be hungry much longer. Now, my question is, because it's kind of hard to tell, obviously, with them tripping off shrooms right now, is this just because of, the effect of like the shrooms and they're just, on like a bad trip? Or is this, and it could be also, I guess, like a combination of both, like, the shrooms, or is Lottie tapping into, the supernatural element of the woods and just like her whole, ability where she sees like these visions and stuff like that. And she says they won't be hungry much longer. So I want to know what you guys think as far as like that, that goes like as well. We then see Jackie, she brings Travis up into like the attic and like the cabin, and, she wants to hook up with him. But at first, Travis doesn't want to because he says that he thinks that he loves Nat. And Jackie's like, oh, you're so sweet, but you're really stupid. And she gets into, she explains and tells Travis that she knows that Shauna, fucked like her boyfriend behind like her back. And so, she's obviously pissed about that situation. And she basically tells, Travis, she's like, hey, I'm going to offer you again. But if you don't want to do it, this is like your last chance. And so I think kind of like guilts him into this situation, but also we find out that Travis is obviously ate, some of like the food as well, so he has the effects of like the shrooms. So they end up like hooking up, which is obviously going to be a big deal, moving forward. And so at this point, the girls start asking, like where different people like went off to, and they ask where Jackie and Travis went off to, and Lottie's like, Travis doesn't belong to her. And so everyone, they get up and they start, trying to find where Jackie and Travis, went to. And as they're running in the woods, you start hearing what sounds like, wolves howling, which we saw them, obviously in previous, episodes. And so the girls, they start, and who knows if it actually was wolves. It probably was, but it could have just been also in their minds too, because at this point they're tripping, but they hear these wolves howling, and so they start howling back. And it just has this really tribal, sense to it. And so they're like, running through the woods and trying to find, Travis and Jackie, and they're heading back into the cabin. And we see, Travis and Jackie, they're there. And Jackie, they just had like sex or whatever. And so Jackie's trying to like, talk about it. Travis realizes that there's something obviously wrong because, at this point, Travis is really starting to trip like as well. And then the girls show up, they come into the cabin and they confront Jackie and they're like, what were you guys doing? And, it's interesting because at this point, Lottie, she goes up and she's like, you don't mean anything, anymore. And I'm probably like, I'm paraphrasing that line, but she says that to Jackie and really kind of, symbolizes like overthrowing her alpha status, in the group. And so they end up locking her in like, one of the different rooms, like by herself. And I was actually kind of worried. I thought they were going to kill Jackie at that point, but because, like in the last episode, I was talking to you guys, I was kind of thinking that I'm like, oh, Jackie, I think she might actually, survive, and we might see her at some point, even though they kind of make it sound like that she died. Part of me is starting to think that Jackie could possibly be the girl that falls in the trap and then they end up eating. Just in my thought behind that is because of, everything that's happened, that she's definitely made a lot of enemies, in, the group of girls. And, some people are just really fed up with her shit. So I kind of have the feeling she might be the girl that dies like in that trap. But who knows? I could be totally wrong with that as well. I kind of hope, even though she is kind of a shithead as far as like, what she did with like, Travis, I still like her character. So I do kind of hope that she does actually end up surviving some way, somehow. But then we see the other, the group of girls. So they lock Jackie up, they're in the room, and they start, it looks like, at first I was like, oh shit, they're about to have like a fucking, orgy like here with, with Travis. But, you think that's kind of like where they're going at first. And then you realize that they actually, you see like their eyes, and obviously, everything with the shrooms, everything's kind of crazy, but you see like their teeth look weird and like the black eyes. So that was actually kind of creepy. And you realize that they're trying to kill him because they think that he's like a deer. And so he gets like away, and he runs out into the woods, and they start chasing after him. And then Shauna grabs like a knife, and I was just like, holy fucking shit. I was like, but wait a second, Travis can't die because he makes it out of the woods. So I knew that he wasn't gonna die, at least in this episode. But it was definitely kind of, I was like, what is going on? And one of the groups that was kind of like off by themselves, we see Van and Ty, they're together. And we see Ty like ends up taking off like Van's mask, and I was kind of surprised. And again, it could be because of like the shrooms, but I feel like that was what her face kind of looks like. I was just kind of surprised that her face healed up so well the way that it did, just because like when initially what happened, like her face was fucked up, and like I know that they they sewed it back together, but it looked pretty damn good for being like attacked by a wolf. So I was a little surprised by that, but it's just like a little small nitpick as far as like that goes. And then we see Coach, he's talking to Nat, and he's like, hey, you know what, you got to go tell Travis, you got to go tell him how you feel. And so Nat goes off to try and like find him, and right after that Misty like hears like the conversation, and she's like, oh, like I heard what you just said. And then we get Coach, like he admits to Misty that he's actually gay. Now with that, which I don't think they're going to go that way, because I feel like that'd be kind of fucked up for them to do that, but with him like saying like he's gay, and he's like, I actually don't care about you, Misty. Is the coach going to be around for like much longer? Is she going to end up like killing him? Because now that she knows, this information, who knows how they're going to play that out. I don't feel they're going to do that, because I feel like that would be kind of, messed up to go that way. But that's just kind of like a quick thought that I had with that whole situation, just because we know how Misty is. She is a crazy bitch. So we'll see what happens as far as that goes. And then, Nat, she's running through the woods. She ends up running to the cabin and hears, Jackie. So she actually ends up freeing her. And then they go down to hunt, and try and find, Travis before it's too late. And they do end up saving Travis. But we see and we get confirmation that it looks like Lottie is in fact the Antler Queen. And so, and like I said, the end of the episode is where, in present time, where they're all talking, and they Nat goes up and meets up with Misty, and tells her to help with like the body. But basically, like the end of the episode, we also see that it looks like we get confirmation that Lottie is the Antler Queen, which kind of had like a suspicion that could be the case. And I know a lot of you guys were kind of thinking like the same thing, and it makes sense just with like her visions and everything like that. And in this episode, she kind of like overthrew Jackie as being one of the alphas, at least as far as like the girls on like the soccer team goes. So definitely interesting to see how that's going to play out. And we only got one more episode, guys. Next week is going to be the season finale. So I feel like they had to have known that they were going to be getting a season 2. I mean, it did get announced like pretty like early on, because there's a lot to still kind of like wrap up. So it's good to see that things aren't going to completely wrap up in this last episode, and I feel like they will still have a good amount of story to go in season 2. So, but what did you guys think of episode 9? Overall, again, I felt like we got a lot of shit that happened in this episode. Got a good amount of answers, but we obviously still got a good amount of questions as well. So let me know what your guys' thoughts are, all your thoughts, your theories. What do you think is going to happen in the season finale? Let me know down below in the comments. And again, if you guys are new to the channel, please hit that subscribe button as well as the bell button next to it. That way you get notifications for all my new videos. Give this video a thumbs up. Really, really helps the video out. And thank you guys so much. My last video that I did for Yellowjackets, it got such, overall positive feedback from you guys. So I really, really appreciate that. I am loving the show, and I love, going back and forth with all you guys, commenting. I know I messed up on a couple things, guys. I apologize for that last week. Tried to be a little bit better, and it was like when I was doing this, paying attention to the details. So I think got everything right this time around. But if I did mess up, feel free to let me know. That's totally fine. I'm human. I make mistakes. But it's fun just engaging with you guys in the comments. So again, make sure you stay around, because I'm going to be covering the finale next week. And then I'm at least going to be having one person from the show. I'm hoping to possibly get more. So make sure to stick around for that as well. So hit that subscribe button and bell button. And as always, guys, please make sure to check back for more Pop Culture with Pat.